Have you ever really stopped to think about what it takes to manage metabolic health?
Mm.
I mean, things like diabetes.
Hmm.
We tend to think of it as, a simple sugar problem.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the answer wasn't just one pill, but a whole strategy?
Mm-hmm.
One that looks at the role of every single vitamin, mineral, even ancient herbs in your diet.
It's a huge shift in perspective. You're moving beyond just managing symptoms to actually understanding the entire metabolic engine.
Right.
We're not just looking at a high blood sugar reading. We're asking what's happening in the pancreas, the liver, the blood vessels, and what specific nutrients can support those functions at a cellular level.
And that is exactly what we're doing today. We are doing a deep dive into some fascinating source material on diabetes management. We're going to focus on the evidence, the actual mechanisms of how these nutraceuticals and botanicals work.
And the sources we're looking at, they give us a really unique perspective. They come from Astona Labs, which is a big Indian manufacturer of these supplements. They've been around for, what, over 30 years?
Wow, okay.
And when you see their certifications, ISO 9001, FDA, GMP, and importantly, AYUH, which is for traditional Indian medicine, it shows you something.
Yeah, it shows a certain level of rigor.
Exactly. It shows that the ingredients they choose aren't just based on, folk remedies. This is high-tech manufacturing applying real scientific standards to traditional knowledge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We really have to start with the basics of the challenge itself. Insulin resistance. It seems to be the central problem, the real choke point.
It is. The whole challenge falls under the umbrella of diabetes mellitus, chronic condition, right? Defined by high blood sugar. And it's either because you can't produce insulin, that's type 1, or you can't use it properly, which is type 2.
And the scale of this is just immense.
No, it's huge. The documents we looked at highlight the situation in India, for example, where you have over 100 million people living with it. And while we touch on all types, the real focus for this kind of nutritional support is on type 2 and its precursor, which is insulin resistance.
So to get why it all breaks down, we have to understand the hero of this story, insulin. It's made by the beta cells in the pancreas. You eat, your blood sugar goes up, and insulin is basically the key. It tells your cells, hey, open up, take in this glucose for energy, or store it. And that brings your blood sugar back down. Simple.
Until it isn't. The problem is a failure of communication. That's what insulin resistance, or IR, is. The cells just stop listening to the key. They get stubborn.
And the causes are everywhere in modern life, aren't they?
They really are. Excess weight, eating too many processed carbs all the time, not moving enough, and of course genetics plays a part too.
What really stood out from the sources, though, was the cascade effect. This isn't just about blood sugar. It sets off a system-wide fire alarm.
It really does. It leads to high blood pressure, elevated triglycerides, and that dangerous fat that builds up around your organs.
Intra-abdominal fat.
Exactly. And that metabolic dysfunction is a direct path to really serious long-term problems. We're talking about atherosclerosis, hardened arteries, which leads straight to heart attacks and strokes.
And it doesn't stop there.
Not at all. It can cause cardiomyopathy, severe nerve damage, even inflammation and scarring of the liver. Insulin resistance is essentially whole-body systemic inflammation.
So how do we catch this early? The sources talk a lot about the Okinawa index.
The homeostasis model assessment for insulin resistance, it's a critical number. It combines your fasting glucose and your fasting insulin to give you one single score.
Kind of like a metabolic report card.
It is. Think of it as a speedometer. If your score is under 1.0, you're in the green. Optimal insulin sensitivity. But if you start creeping up into that 1.0 to 2.5 range,
That's the check engine light.
that is your check engine light. It's a warning that you need to make some lifestyle changes. And if you're over 2.5, the alarm bells are ringing. That means you need significant immediate changes to your diet and activity levels. It's the canary in the coal mine.
Which brings us right back to the foundation. Before we even talk about supplements, the source material is crystal clear. The lifestyle changes are non-negotiable.
Absolutely. Consistent exercise, losing weight, cutting out added sugar and processed foods, getting enough protein and fiber.
7 to 8 hours of good sleep, and managing stress.
Right. Those are the things that have to be in place. The supplements we're about to discuss, they're tools, they support the repair process, but they absolutely cannot replace a healthy lifestyle.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me. Assuming you've got that foundation, how do specific micronutrients come in and actually support these pathways? Let's start with the building blocks. Vitamins.
Okay, so we can kind of group them. Some that improve function and some that prevent complications. For function, you have to start with vitamin D.
Right, the sunshine vitamin.
It's so much more than that. The research shows it directly improves glycemic control and insulin sensitivity in both type 1 and type 2. And crucially, it helps protect those beta cells in the pancreas. If you're deficient, your diabetes risk goes way up.
And what about vitamin A? We don't hear as much about that one.
It's fundamental. The sources detail its role in the actual physical development of the pancreas and those insulin-producing cells. It's literally a structural component.
Okay, so then we have the B complex vitamins. They're like the mechanics of the whole system.
That's a great way to put it. They're the metabolic grease monkeys. Take B1 thiamine. It's essential for glucose metabolism. Can't process sugar without it. It's also key for reducing long-term complications, especially nerve damage.
And the others help with the surrounding issues, right?
Exactly. B5 helps lower cholesterol and triglycerides. P6 is a cofactor for metabolizing glucose, fats, and proteins.
But there was a really important point in the sources about B12.
Yes, this is so important. B12 is crucial for preventing nerve inflammation. But here's the key insight. If you're on the standard medication metformin, you absolutely need to supplement with B12.
Why is that?
Because metformin, as effective as it is known to interfere with B12 absorption. So you could be creating another problem while solving one. It's a critical piece of the puzzle.
That's a perfect example of how nutrition and standard medicine have to work together. And we can't forget biotin or B7.
Right, famous for hair, skin, and nails, but metabolically, it's a powerhouse. It helps carbohydrate metabolism and can really improve insulin sensitivity.
Okay, let's shift to minerals. It seems like each one has a very specific job.
A very specific target, yeah. Chromium is probably the most famous one. They call it the glucose tolerance factor. It doesn't act like insulin, but it makes insulin work better. It magnifies its effect.
So it helps reduce both long-term and short-term blood sugar markers.
Precisely. It helps lower HbA1c and your fasting blood glucose. And then you have zinc.
What's its role?
Zinc is physically required to store and release insulin from the pancreas. Many diabetic patients are deficient, and supplementing can directly help glycemic control.
And to round it out, magnesium and selenium.
These two are the firefighters. They fight the collateral damage. Yes, they help with glucose and lipid metabolism, but their main job here is to manage the massive oxidative stress and chronic inflammation that really define the long-term damage from diabetes.
Okay, so we've covered the basic building blocks. Now let's move up a level to the system managers, amino acids, and these powerful things called polyphenols.
Right. So among the amino acids, 3 stand out in the source material. First, alanine. It's part of something called the glucose-alanine cycle, which is how your muscles and liver trade fuel to maintain blood sugar.
Then there's taurine.
Taurine is a potent antioxidant. It helps calm down that systemic inflammation we keep talking about, improves insulin sensitivity, and just generally protects against long-term complications in your nerves and kidneys.
But the big one in this group seems to be L-arginine.
Oh, without a doubt. It has huge cardiovascular benefits. It does stimulate insulin secretion, yes, but its superstar role is in creating nitric oxide, or NO.
And NO is what relaxes your blood vessels.
It tells them to relax and open up. This improves blood flow, which is absolutely critical for heart health and kidney health, 2 systems that are so vulnerable in diabetic patients. It's a circulation booster.
That systemic impact is a perfect lead-in to transresveratrol, the stuff we hear about in grapes and berries. It's a metabolic and longevity powerhouse, isn't it?
It absolutely is. The sources show it works on multiple fronts. It helps modulate blood glucose, decreases insulin resistance, and it's a powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. It hits all 3 prongs of metabolic failure.
But it's famous for something else too, sirtuins.
Yes, activating the sirtuins. People call them the longevity genes. By activating them, resveratrol supports basal cellular health and may even slow the aging process. The sources also mention its neuroprotective effects and its ability to reduce blood clots. It's protecting the heart and the brain.
That is just fascinating, how these compounds work on whole systems, not just one isolated problem.
Yeah.
Let's move into the traditional botanicals. This is where we see those ancient Ayurvedic principles offering this complex, multi-targeted support.
And we have to start with Gymnema sylvestre. I love its nickname, Gurmar, the sugar destroyer.
The sugar destroyer. So how does it work?
It has 2 brilliant mechanisms. First, the active compounds, gennemic acids, they literally dull the sweet taste receptors on your tongue.
So you just don't crave sugar as much.
You stop the craving before it even starts. And second, it actually blocks sugar absorption in the small intestine, so less glucose even gets into your bloodstream after a meal. It's a 1-2 punch.
And physiologically, it does even more.
It does. It increases insulin secretion and sensitivity, improves the glucose uptake into the muscles and liver. It's a huge multitasker.
Okay, next up is fenugreek, or methi.
Fenugreek's mechanism is mostly about its high fiber content. It slows down carbohydrate digestion by inhibiting certain enzymes. But the critical part is that it increases the translocation of GLUT4.
Okay, let's pause there because that's a key concept. What is GLUT4 and what is translocation?
Okay, so think of GLUT4 as the physical door on the surface of your muscle and fat cells. It's the door that opens to let glucose in.
And in insulin resistance, that door is stuck shut.
Or it's just sticky, right. Translocation means fenugreek helps physically move more of those doors, the GLUT4 transporters, to the cell surface. This means you can get more glucose out of the blood and into the cells for energy. It just dramatically clears glucose from the blood.
So if fenugreek is opening the doors, what about some other classics, like neem and chlorella or bitter gourd?
Neem works in a similar way. It also helps upregulate GLUT4, but it also works further up the chain, inhibiting the enzymes in your gut that break down complex carbs, so it helps prevent that big post-meal sugar spike.
And chlorella is the traditional powerhouse.
Right. It contains compounds like keratin and polypeptide P that actually mimic insulin's action. They act like insulin in the body, which lowers blood glucose. Plus, it has all those traditional benefits for liver health and blood purification.
You can't talk about diabetes without talking about heart health, which brings us to Arjuna. I know it is a heart tonic, but what's its direct link to glucose?
Arjuna's active compounds, things like flavonoids, they actually enhance glucose uptake by the cells and stimulate insulin release. So it's improving insulin sensitivity while at the same time providing that strong structural support to the heart and blood vessels, which are under so much strain from high blood sugar.
Okay, finally, let's get to the two that have so much buzz around them now. Berberine and ashwagandha.
Berberine is, it's arguably the most researched botanical in this space right now. It is a critical player for blood sugar control. The sources we read suggest its effectiveness can be comparable to some standard medications, like metformin.
Wow.
Yeah, and it also helps reduce cholesterol and triglycerides and supports gut health. It hits so many aspects of metabolic syndrome at once.
And then there's ashwagandha, the famous adaptogen. It doesn't target glucose in the same way, does it?
Not directly. It tackles a root cause of metabolic stress, cortisol.
The stress hormone.
That's right. By helping regulate cortisol, it indirectly improves everything. High cortisol just makes insulin resistance worse. But it also has some direct benefits for improving insulin sensitivity and lowering blood sugar. On top of everything else it does for muscle recovery and cognitive function, it's the one that really gets the link between stress and sugar.
So when you put this all together, what does it really mean? It seems like metabolic management is this complex system of levers and pulleys.
It is.
And this approach, with the vitamins, minerals, and all these botanicals, it's not just targeting one thing. It's hitting multiple pathways at the same time. You're supporting the pancreas, enhancing insulin signaling, reducing sugar absorption, and fighting the long-term damage all at once.
That's the final takeaway, really. Metabolic health needs a layered approach. Lifestyle is the absolute non-negotiable foundation. But when you add this kind of targeted nutritional support, you're addressing the underlying inflammation, the oxidation, and those physical transport failures, those sticky GLUT4 doors. That standard treatment might not fix. It's a strategy for systemic repair, not just managing a symptom.
So if modern certified research is validating what traditional medicine has known for centuries about ingredients like gymnema and berberine, that they can target cravings, absorption, and insulin function all at once, how might this shift the future focus of chronic disease management, away from single-target drugs and toward a more comprehensive, systemic metabolic repair? That's definitely something to think about until our next deep dive.